take it down in your head and try to remember it. Jesus always drew me. In fact, if I had found any minister that ever talked in parables, I would have become a minister, but I examined all the books of sermons and none of them used. Jesus talked only in parables after the Sermon on the Mount, and without a parable spake he not unto them. So I made a careful study of them, and I made this discovery. He told them in pairs, masculine and feminine. Every one of them is paired. Just like Noah took the creatures into the ark, so they would multiply and reproduce after their time. And I think Jesus must have had that purpose. And I'm going to tell you, by taking a few of those parables, I have seen a great movement grow in America. Here's, for instance, the mustard seed that grows and spreads for the birds to come in the branches. That is the kind of a parable that appeals to men out of doors. And then he said, in almost the same breath, it's like leaven that makes the bread rise, and that's for women indoors. Now, a great scientist has said that if you have enough dough and put a little yeast in that and leave it for 11 months, it will expand to the dimensions of the earth. It's unbelievable. Unlimited quality that leaven or yeast has. And up in our country, if you plant some mustard, the kind of mustard we have, and don't have a road or a river or an ocean to stop it, in about 11 years, it would spread all over the surface of the world. So one covers the surface, one fills the inner volume of the earth, and a great idea is born. And I made this discovery that all these parables are all different. They must have one central philosophy, one central truth. They were always aimed about the kingdom of heaven. He began them by saying the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a mustard seed, and so on. And now when you want to find the common denominator, there's many different things. There's a number of different methods, and the method I like is that of the bee hunter. When he wants to find wild honey, he catches a few bees and lets one go, and he notices the bee line it takes. He walks 100 yards over here and lets it go, and he sees the bee line it takes. He goes around that circuit and lets it go, and then he goes to where those three bee lines meet, and there's the honey. In the same way, I examined all these parables and found that all the bee lines met at one point, and it was this. The central theme of all was the ever-expanding power of the love of God. Absolutely nothing to stop it. And so, in 11 months, it could fill the volume of the earth. Mustard seed could fill the surface of the earth. Then there's another pair about light. By the way, in my book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, in which I take up the teachings of Jesus, I pair all of these. So if you want to know what those pairs are, you find that very illuminating. The virgins come waiting for the bridegroom, and 5 of them have neglected to bring their oil. The other 5 that have them, they can come in to the wedding. And light is the thing that expands. That's women. They like marriages. Somebody friend of ours was going to be married. And all the women in my family want to go, and of course they want me to go. And I would, in fact, it was only reluctantly I went to my own wedding. Anything that bores me is just a wedding. And the women, it's better than Barnum's Circus anytime. Now, so that appeals to women, but they had to have the light. Then here's for the men now, businessmen. Talents. One had 10, one had 5, one had 2. 2 of them put it in it so it would expand and multiply. But one, thinking that he's a hard boss, he ties up in a napkin so it couldn't expand. You take this quality of what you have here, you're getting here, this kingdom spirit of love and joy, and you go home and you put it in your napkin, and you're not going to have anybody get any of your love or your joy. You'll find it will just dry away, and the other folks will give it to them. Well, now, I'm not going to go on any further with the parables, although I just want to hint at the 2 greatest ones. One is the Good Samaritan, and one is the prodigal son, where it's love itself that is expanding. No symbolism like light or heat or anything. It is where love, in both cases, goes overboard where you're not supposed, ordinary people aren't supposed to use it. For instance, every man will love his son, who's good, but he may not love the son who's disgraced the family. The Samaritans will all love the Samaritans, but it isn't customary for them to love the Jews that have oppressed them. So here is one flows over, expands over to your enemies. One is over to the sinners. It's marvelous when you see a fancy power. He just took the. I think it just came through Jesus. I don't think he sat down ever and said, I'm going to organize these carefully, because that isn't the way. I know we do things at the camp. The more supplies we do, the way the ideas come flowing out, fall into form, and naturally, then the things just organized. And the one kind of speakers the camps don't want are ministries who have their first or second survey, got it all worked out a year in advance, and haven't memorized everything else, and if an inspiration tries to come through, they can't read them together, can't, because they've got it all memorized. See, that's what I mean. It came through Jesus. These things that the Lord just, as he said, I don't say these things, but Father speaketh through me. Well, I said, let's use these. So I said, light. I was at the World Fair. How many of you were at the Chicago World Fair in 1893? Don't we have any gray heads here? How many were there in 1933? Put your hands up. 40 years later. You know how long it takes light to go from, what's the name of that star, Arcturus? 40 years. I was there at the camp in 1933, and at 8 o'clock, all of a sudden, all the lights went on just like that, and I said, who turned them on? No human hand touched it. I had a very delicate instrument raised to catch a light beam that had left Arcturus 40 years before, and it hit that at 8 o'clock, and bang. In other words, just as the other World Fair had ended, a light, while it was in progress, a light came over each day to light this. Well, that way light can expand like that. And so I said, well, I'm going to establish the Camp Farthest Out. 25 years ago, we had one, and we had heavenly light come into it. It's expanded until there was 40 last year, and then the calls from all over the world, and we spread them all over the world, and we expect that light that was there to keep on expanding. Just trust and let these parables work and see what happens. Then I said to my Bible class 15 years ago, if the 12 disciples had each put $1 at interest, in 700 years that would have multiplied by interest and compound interest, it could have bought up the whole world. Why didn't they do it? If some 12 men had done it 700 years ago, we would now have our economic system under this price method. Why didn't they do it 700 years ago? And I said, and the next Sunday I said, I've been thinking that over, and the reason they didn't do it is because they wouldn't be there to see it, and why aren't we doing it? So I'd like to invite 12 of you come up and give me $12 each next Sunday, just 12 of you. And we're going to put it, we'll call it a gift to the stars, and see what will happen 700 years from now. So they came up, 12 of them, they got very highly honored, and I put it at unusual interest. I didn't put it in the bank. I gave it away to good causes. And then my wife died 2 years later. They wanted to have a memorial for her because she was a tither. They'd like to give 300. The Gideon's Band, they called them, like to give something, and it amounted to $4,000 a year. I said 500 to start underwrite the beginning of the Clear Horizon. We supported missionaries and all kinds of things for those 3 years. Then Roger Babbison said, if you only form a foundation farthest out, so it would be free of income tax laws, instead of giving you $50 for your scholarship, I could give you $150 and it wouldn't cost me any more. So we established that. And it's been expanding. Now we're in a phase before I end, I'm going to tell you how we could use $100,000 to $200,000 or $300,000. I'm going to tell you this. As this kept on expanding, I got a telephone call, and I was Norman Vincent Field Church. It's a woman in a faraway state. She said, when my husband died 10 years ago and left me with 3 little boys and no money, I started raising flowers. I took out as a senior partner, and I took your textbook. I would lift up mine eyes as my textbook. And I've prospered so more than any nurseryman in the state, and they don't understand how a woman can succeed so well. She said, I want to send you $24,000 every year. Now, where do those things come from? And that's been keeping me alive, and the Banner Bees and so on. Now, I'm trusting. I want you to give it to the Lord and let it expand, because I want to tell you some more expansion. In 1935, Chicago had written me to start a Kingdom of God movement, asking me if I would. My kids started over there. So I wrote a little booklet called The Silver Sandals and said we're going to start this as kind of just sort of an unseen movement, just in prayer. We're not going to have any letterheads or any offices. It's going to be secret, going under the ground. It's like planting a seed. 7 years from now, I said, it will grow up into a tree, and then we can take all those seeds, plant them. That'd be 1942. And by 1949, another 7 years, we'll have an orchard. We can plant them all over the world. Now, I didn't know how prophetically I was speaking. So in 1942, Sam Shoemaker and Stanley Jones wrote me and asked that they had come to the conclusion that we three would get together and invite in a self-reflected group of spiritual men, leaders, to meet once a year in Washington for 2 or 3 days of prayer. It would be have a fine, wholesome effect upon the nation. So we brought in Frank Laubach and Starr Daily and Glenn Harding and Rufus Mosley and Norman Vincent Peale and Albert Day and a splendid group. Now, for 12 years, we've been meeting regularly. I haven't missed a single one of them. But that was in 1942, and I said to my friends, it's become a tree, and then I've expanded it. You can't get the Silver Sandals anymore because it's going to be started in the larger book, 2 or 3 gathered together on the world situation. Well, in 1949, at a camp in Pennsylvania where Starr Daily and Frank Laubach and Louise Eggleston were leaders, a great vision came to Starr Daily one night, and he just took the camp by storm. He said the time has come to enlarge the Camp Farthest Out into a mission Farthest Out and go into a world movement. Well, now I want to tell a little bit about that, because it's been growing. In 1948, we sent a pilot group. I led 42 people on a trip through Europe, and we found it out to the ground before this thing burst upon even Frank Daly and that group. In 1951, Roland Brown, he took a group to Europe and spoke a few times and caught the imagination of people of England. In 1951, all the bishops and the leading ministers of England invited Roland Brown to come over and spend 7 months. They'd open up the churches from one end of the nation to the other, and he simply packed the churches, and the church was almost dead in England, as attendance has been so poor. And he's the only layman that's ever spoken in the high pulpit in Westminster, in Canterbury Cathedral. And next year, if he went over there, they had him speak there again. And when he left, they got out a magazine supplement of the Christian Herald of England, nothing in it but articles about Roland Brown by all these famous ministers, that no one had done what he had done. So we, when we got led here in 1954, you see now this 7 years, will end in 1956, spreading it, get the seeds planted around the world and nurturing them and cultivating them. And by 1956, I think it's going to permeate even into the government. We notice it's this expanding thing by just doing it on this realm of 7 and not being hurried or anything else, letting the Lord take his time, is irresistible. We've opened the doors for that. Princess Wilhelmina had us come and spend the morning with her and opens up Holland for us. In England, all the leading ministers, many of them came to this camp, and 33 of them, and 7 of them, Roland had plowed and got them hearts opened up in the year that he was there. They were really CFO type. You'd think you were sitting down there with Starr Daily and Frank Laubach and George Hales and Cobb and Glenn Harding, Roland Brown. There they were, and they wanted us to have a camp farthest out in Devon, in Swanwick, and up in Scotland in Stirling. Just got a letter from Roland yesterday. 2 of them want to come over to America, the 2 best ones, want to make it. And those are a number of camps. They had $1,000, they could make it. And so I'm just hoping that oil will burst through and they'll have enough for things like that. But the point is, then they'll just carry the camps and they'll just spread like that all over England. Now, in India we had 3 camps farthest out, and thrilled them so that they want us to come back to that. But the missionaries were working in the different fields, and they say, we have our vacation in May. We go up in the mountains, several hundred missionaries, and we need this more than the people. If you'll come over and have a camp farthest out there in May, set us on fire, we can go out there, and then we can just set all India on fire. We discovered how this will all open up. In Japan, we had 2 camps, and and they wanted to come back and spend a longer time and spread them all over the country. In the Philippines, we had 2, and they wanted more, and so on. So what do we need? I'm looking around to find folks that have that gift. They can talk to. I'm not leaving this country again, but Roland Brown will spend 6 months every year, and you want to find someone who can team with him, and as a speaker, and someone who can do creative writing, and for $10,000, you could send a team of 3 persons around the world, and for $25,000, you could send 3. Now, this is what I began to see, a great possibility of keeping up this, all this. Now, I want to tell you what some experience we had in our journey. I took my coat off and left my notes there. Well, when I was when I wrote A Man's Reach, toward the end I make this statement: if they're ever in danger of a world war, again, of a third world war, I'm going to ask for an army of 300,000 people for 3 months, and I'll guarantee that we'll stop the war before it starts. Now that's saying a whole lot. It's like sticking your neck out, and I've done that a few times, and I'm absolutely sure, and that's the way the people will give you the chance. There's a big bully in our high school. He's 6'4", and he's bullying everybody, knocking them around, and he shoved me in the snow, and he said to a bunch of boys, I could lick him with one hand. Well, something had to stop him. I stuck my neck out. I said, I bet I could lick you in 10 rounds. That's just what he wanted, and he arranged he got the barn, and I had it. He arranged the ropes, put signs up everywhere, so everybody could see what a wonderful fighter he was. Folks, I knocked him down 8 times in the 3rd round, and he never did any more bullying. But the only chance to prove what I could do was to stick my neck out and give him a chance. I'd like to have the government say, you're doing a lot of big talking there. They'll give you that 300,000 and see what you can do, and I'll tell you what I would do. I put them in camps of 300 each. Take 1,000 camps, wouldn't it? With leaders like Frank Laubach and Stanley Jones and Starr Daily and this George Hale. That's where we have to bring in all this reserves. If I mention the name of Cobb, all these new discoveries. Well, now, I guarantee that in 3 months we could do that, because I have seen a team of 100 of us at Star Island, or just 100, and just for 10 days. And at the end we gave a prayer for Hitler, and the power is so great that the woman who's now in charge of all the Methodist missionary work of 3 continents, Africa, South America, and Europe, she said, I know something's happening to Hitler this very hour and this very minute. And the next morning the paper said, Boston Transcript said, something happened to Hitler last night. His armies were lined up along the border of Poland, ready for a great blitzkrieg, and suddenly stopped. It was 2 o'clock at night. They said those are supposed to know the exact time. And it was 9 o'clock here. It was exactly the minute Miss Lee said that. His armies were ready to march into Poland, and he countermanded the order and opened up telephone communication with Vladi and Chamberlain and offered to give a plebiscite, have them have a truce for 1 year. At the end of that time, let them have a vote, told us how much land they would cede. That would have stopped the war. The war never would have come if they had acted on it. But they didn't trust Hitler because he had double-crossed them, and he might have do it again. But folks, you can blaspheme the Son of Man, Jesus said, but not the Holy Spirit. If he'd had 40 camps farthest out in England and asked them all to pray, then he could have said to Hitler, you double-crossed us when you dealt with us on this level. But now you're not dealing with us on this level. We've been on our knees. We have prayers behind us. You're dealing with the Holy Spirit. We'll grant that honesty. But if you double-cross us this time, the boomerangs will come back on you because Jesus said that's an unpardonable sin. It could have been stopped. I'll tell you other things that we've tried out. 1942, November 1st, I first wrote an article to tell people exactly what's going to happen. Like that baseball player, Babe Ruth. He had 2 strikes against him, and then the crowd began to boo him, and he pointed to the fence where he's going to knock the next one over. And the next one came, he knocked it straight over there. Now, I wrote exactly what had happened. I said, Hitler is working on the subconscious plane, the psychic plane. A big article by Jung, the great psychologist, who psychoanalyzed him, he said, I'm the subconscious of the nation. That's what Hitler said. He consults all kinds of, not oculists, but you know what I mean, occultists, and fortune tellers and everything else. But at any rate, he was bringing in all that sort of stuff, and he was licking all the Sardine Chamberlain because they were down here on a pure mental plane. But I said, if we go up on a spiritual plane, just as high above the subconscious as sits above the conscious, and we get up there in the superconscious and get the nation to love, send love to Hitler. And 3 of us resigned our jobs, Starr Daily and Glenn Harding and myself. We began this going around the nation, taking 7 months, going to all the largest cities, and we just had them pour love on Hitler. All the battles that we fought before November 1st, 1942 were defeats. All of them were victories after that. Everything Hitler did before that was just like magic. He rolled over Poland, Czechoslovakia, France, and after that he banged up against Russia, banged back, and he fired the generals, blamed them, and put in poor generals. I can tell you, the way to win is to get up take an elevator and go up above the sun and work with God. Well, now, I know that if I had 3 months, 300,000, well, and I said in this book, it wouldn't have to be fine young men like those 300,000 we lost by death in the Second World War, young men that have the hands on the future. They could be middle-aged or old people. They could be blind. They could be lame. But they'd have to meet one test that no armies ever had to meet. They'd have to all have absolute faith in the power of prayer. Well, if you want to, if they could grant an army, how could you train 300,000? You couldn't. You'd first have to have some officers training camps. That's what the government does. And I said, right, all right, let's start training officers. And what are the camps? Why, the camps farthest out. We've had for years, we've had officers training camps. Now we're getting them all around the world. All we need to do is to get folks to come to those officers training camps. And of leadership quality. If I had $50,000 to give free scholarships to any graduates of divinity schools, or any young ministers who couldn't afford to come, and some of the older ones who couldn't afford it. In other words, we could bring in about several thousand ministries in the camp. And then, further, we brought in 1,000. They go back and each have a church of about 300, and when we set those 1,000 ministers on fire in the camp, they go back and they set 300 on fire. You'd have your 300,000 right there. And 10 to 3 years at least you would. Well, there's $75,000 now, $25,000 for the traveling teams, $75,000 for free scholarships, and we could simply save the world. Now, we found, wherever we went, and I'm putting this into a book because I can't even, that in India, as a disciple of Gandhi, it is a little man of 85 pounds. He has stomach ulcers. He's about 60, and he refuses to go by train. He walks, and wherever he goes, he comes to a village, and he goes up, and he talks first to poor landowners and suggests that each one give some land to those who don't have it. Then he goes to the rich ones, and they they'd be ashamed when they hear what these poor ones do, and they did. He's had several million acres already given. And he's got now 300 others working. Some of his workers, disciples, into our Camps Farthest Out. And they are putting Jesus in the economic system. They're putting the methods of Jesus. And if they spread that, and the only ones object are the communists. The communists see that they're stealing their thunder. The communists came into China, and they grabbed the land and took 500 landowners from this county out, had them all kneel down, and shot every one of them, and which made everybody of their friends mad and their relatives. And if this is done in this loving way, and they're doing it fast too, more and more. One landowner gave 100,000 acres. They see that that's the way to prevent communism coming in. And we go over there and have that 3 camps farthest out in India. They probably want more than that now. And oh my, how far they went in that. And how marvelous their teachings were, how their spiritual interpretations were, and the way we teach in Buddhists and the Hindus and the Christians. We would get a lot of those disciples of Vinoda, that's his name, coming here, and they could put Christ into it. Why, we just see the whole thing there, and just a little, and they're spending $60 billion a year for wars, destruction, our government is, and if he had 60,000, he wouldn't need 75,000 right away. Well, now and I'm not going to ask anybody for this money. I want your prayers. I believe this is so important. When I pray it, it might be somebody, some oil man may come and say, I'll give you 100,000 a year myself for the next 3 years. It may be that 100 people over the country may say, we'll give you each $1,000 a year. It might be 1,000 folks that say, I will each give you $100. If one of those things will be taken care of in his way, I'm not a bit concerned about money. Then I went to Koinonia, which has been forming between 2 schools. There is to be a continuing kind of a continuous camp farthest out, where we make it a training school and compete with the colleges that can do the job a whole lot better. And it'll cost us something like $500,000, an endowment of about $200,000 a year, or an endowment of $3 million to keep it going like that. And I went there and I just told them exactly what the simple was. I said, now if we could get a group of trained folks and pay the salary about $15,000, we could get 3 professors in a college of English. Like that preacher college in Virginia, Haverford. And Frank Laubach said, I have been asked to go to Hartford and do some teaching along this line. And so we'll just, and that's when the colleges isn't full. Each year we have the trainees that wanted to go, could go right there, we could do it right there. And then we could use Koinonia for like a continuing camp farther south for conditioning these folks. And now the signs are coming that the armies may want to send some of their officers to spend a month in a place like that. And I said, the trouble is with Koinonia, the board of directors, there's only 90% all the way with this. 10% of the and more trustees have not been to camps, and there's a poo-poo, all this business about prayer. They just they cut the thing asunder. I've never known a thing fail. We've had over 400 camps farthest out, and perhaps 1,000. Only 3 of them have ever gone under financially and otherwise, and in each case there was a great jar and discard in the council ring. Where you have perfect harmony, always win. I've seen, as I mentioned, how in football, when you get that harmony, it always wins. I have a little company, paid no attention to business. I have a little company that's succeeding because we all have harmony. Judy Stowe was here, said she never saw such harmony anywhere. She's seen it in the Mac Publishing Company this year. But when you get discard, we had discard in it once. And I had to tell the woman that she really ought to leave, and the manager just couldn't stand it. She told me I just had to fire her, and she went into hysterics, went into pout, well, worse than that, that she never get another job, and she played to my sympathy, so that kind-hearted Glenn said, all right, stay another year if you have any more of these tantrums. It just lasts for a week. You'll just have to leave. And she fell and off a chair and broke her leg. And we had to go and put her in the hospital, and we paid all our expenses. And then we found everything she was doing was wrong. She was sending done to those that had already paid. Those that hadn't paid, she wasn't sending. So I put prayer ahead of me. I went over after she was recovering, and they were paying her all. I said, "You're a round peg in a square hole." And the Lord's looking at this business, and he's telling me that if you get a better job, you get better pay some other place. She took it sweetly this time because the prayer love had gone ahead, and she got a job that paid her better. And I'm going to tell you why. Sometimes the kindest thing, if you're working with people that are not in harmony, it's better have them resign for this reason. She found broke her leg that time. If I left her in there another year, she'd have fallen and broken her neck. Because the Lord looked at that business, and he will not let us keep people on the ground. I was saving her life, you might say. And the same way, and I told them, I laid down the law at the Koinonia, and all those who didn't go 100 ways resigned. And immediately after that, everything began to pick up, even finances and everything else. It's all about, I'm going to put the story of it into a book. It's like Moses going down the Red Sea. And he said, and it's over here, you're leaving all those things and leaving all these helpers behind you. Even some of these we expected to get financial help from. We let them resign because we were expecting financial help, but they weren't giving that other. And he coming down there and said, "Ron, he was back in Egypt. Why do you bring us out here and have the Koinonia die out here in the desert? And or how you ever cross the Red Sea?" I want to say the waves are already starting to roll back. We're going to walk right across, and that Red Sea is a Red Sea of blood, of war. And I'm going to walk right there until, how am I ever going to talk to the president along these lines? And the Senate. So I said, I've got an invitation to talk to the Senate Breakfast Club next winter. I'm just going to go, and not until the soles of my shoes are wet. Am I going to expect to see this determination for war begin to roll back? We're just going to utterly on faith. But how can you do it? You can't do it unless you have tremendous an army of praying folks, 300,000. And now I'm going to tell you a parable that thrills me. I told you the parable of Omi Hachaman, of the Omi Brotherhood. The center of it was that saintly man, Merrill Voorhees. He sent us out and told us to go down and see the pearl farm. The automobile we were in, driven by a couple of young men, devoted followers of Voorhees. They were brothers. One could talk English and the other could drive the car. And the car stopped. We took it into the garage and they worked out a while. We went several miles and stopped again. We went back and they found dirt. It took 2 hours. It was late in the afternoon. We wanted to get down to this pearl farm we were going to spend the night there, but we wanted to get there by supper. I said, we won't get there about midnight. Finally, I said, now, I saw we had a woman in the party. It's all right to go traveling with a bunch of men, but if you have a woman, Marcia Brown there, she's an awful lovely girl, but she does like to see jewelry. Men don't pay any attention to that. It costs them a lot of money. When they get married, they have to buy a diamond and all that. But the women, they get these diamonds. They like them. Now, I said, we're just going down there and spend a day, and then we're going to Tokyo. Don't go. Let's go to Pearl Farm. Let's go straight to Tokyo. But Marcia said, Merrill wanted us to go. He's eager for us to go. I said, well, so didn't know he said such silly things as pearls. And we arrived there at midnight. The next morning, a boat was sent to us by the richest pearl merchant in the world. The man who gave us everything to get the pearl above price. The perfect epitome of this. The perfect description. He's now 96 years of age, doesn't see anybody, but he was anxious to see the three friends of Merrill, Voorhees. We were taken across the water. We came, his son, who was 6 years of age, met us and said, we'll have the manager show you through the factory here, the way they produce the sculptured pearls. And I'll get word to my father. He won't be ready until 10 o'clock. They gave us an hour. And he doesn't see you people ordinarily, so it's a big honor, of course. And before I went here, I said, is he a Christian? His son said he's one half Christian, and one half Buddhist, and one half Shinto. He looked like not Pocahontas, but looked like Black Hawk, I guess. He a very homely face, but full of character. And he's so sweet and lovely, too, if he could talk English. The divers, finding pearls that dive, hundreds of them that dive for a month and finally bring up hundreds of pearls and finally, out of the hundreds, they'd find one with a pearl. Some little dirt or pebble or something had gotten into the oyster, and it had thrown up a little wall around it and treated rather crooked little pearl, not the finest kind. And he said, why couldn't we put the things in ourselves? But they found every method they used to destroy the oyster, and it wouldn't work. And so then he finally devised a system which is so unique that instead of just diving down and getting one out of hundreds, they produce thousands of pearls every month. The method he used was this. He'd send to America and get mussel shells out of down the Mississippi River, mussel shells. And they'd be cut up and then polished down into little cubes, little spheres. And two of them would be very carefully pushed into an oyster, a living oyster. They dive. Now he has scores of divers, and they bring up the oysters, but they're brought in and they're carefully cultivated that way. Then they're closed carefully, and they're put just about enough for a prayer group, about 12, in a little cage, fastened to a chain, and they have a raft out there, and they have about 100 of those little cages down. Every 3 months they pull them up and clean off the garnishes, barnacles, and other those. And being in the cage, the octopus and other creatures that try to destroy them can't get at them. They're protected. But every 3 months they're brought up and the barnacles are cleaned off, and they're put down again. And 10 to 3 years, they're pulled up and brought in, and you have the most marvelous, symmetrical pearls in all the world. Thousands and thousands of them. Perfect. Every one perfect. Now, I saw in that something remarkable. When he met Edison said, I've been trying for years to invent a way of getting pearls, and you're the only one. He has patents on it, so he's the only one in the world who can do it. I have discovered there a perfect pattern for producing things by mass production. I'll tell you how things are produced. I'm just going to tell you definitely how they're produced. Starr Daily was in the underworld for 25 years. Beaten down, whipped around, filled with sins until Jesus came. And that all those sins had gotten in there under his skin, that repentance that came there, all that. He pulled a little wall of repentance and the love of God and his forgiveness, and he's a pearl. Frank Laubach was just a run-of-the-mill missionary until he was 46. Why, you can buy them by the dozen. Missionaries that aren't accomplishing any more, they might just as well be here selling ribbons in the 10-cent store. They aren't really living religion. They're running around and getting clothes for the poor and feeding them and all that, but they don't have this spark that Tom spoke about yesterday. They don't have any hair they hand me now. Missionaries on the Camp Farthest Out, retired missionaries from India. Oh, if I'd only been here before. All the time I was in India, there were some of those folks who studied Bhagavad Gita and so on. They believed in trust in God. They believed in the power of prayer, and I didn't believe in prayer. I was busy getting church for the poor and looking after things like I run a kind of a relief station. And I scoffed at all their mystical ideas, thought it was all crazy. Now I could go over there and I could catch hold of them that had that. I could have pulled him and say, Christ, to do it better. Oh, he said, all those years I wasted, and that is true. Frank Laubach, one of the young missionaries, and he failed to be elected president of the Theological Seminary in Manila. Lost out by one vote. He was the man that deserved to be there. It embittered him. For 2 years he was sick physically and mentally, spiritually and physically. And at the end of those 2 years he said, Lord, I'm ashamed of myself. I've got to make atonement for this sin of mine, this rebellion. You see, that got me in under his skin. It caused irritation. He put something around it. He said, send me to the hardest place in the world. And they said, well, go to headhunters, the Moros. They can't take your wife or children. You just have to go alone. And there he was, all alone. He couldn't even talk to Jesus. They wouldn't let him. So finally he took up on the hill and to write letters to his father, wistful letters, full of little gems, every one of them. They put in a little booklet called Letters of a Modern Mystic that'll live as long as Practicing the Presence of God of Brother Lawrence. It'll live longer than his other books. It came out of a little irritation, a longing, putting Christ around his defeat. Finally, he said to the priest, what is it? What are your authorities? What do you teach? We teach the book of Luke and the Koran and the 5 books of the Old Testament. But he said, I don't know much about the Koran. I know a lot about the book of Luke. Supposing I meet with you, priest, once a week, and you teach me the Koran, and I'll teach you the book of Luke. Well, they all came, filled his house. He's going to convert a Christian. But he lived the thing, and they didn't. Until after a while, just the force of his life began to convert them. There was no Christian church there. When he left, not only was there a great big Christian church, and the son of the daughter of the head chief was a leader in it, but all the rest of them, even the weren't Christians, they loved him so they came down at the wharf and they all sang Onward Christian Soldiers and other Christian hymns they learned to the occasion. Why, he's become a pearl, that he came out of suffering, out of defeat. Here is Catherine Marshall in bed for 2 years with TB. And when I came up and prayed with her, she said, I wish you'd pray for my husband. It wasn't until he got some trouble that he turned. Why, George Hales had a headache. I won't go into all the other things he had. His knee treated a knee there, and he just put Jesus around there and came a pearl. Why, but then why do we all have to have troubles? Man, his only son was killed. Now he's going to give all his life to the Lord, and so on. Why do we have to wait these troubles? Now I'll tell you what happened. I want to tell you what happened in England. I told you 7 ministers that are just on fire. Marvelous. All of them pearls. Roland Brown went over there in 51 and spoke all these countries. Some of those ministers followed him. Some of them heard him 50 times. He had some American, like the muscle cells, some spiritual muscle. He had some American spiritual muscle and inserted it under their souls, and it's grown into pearls. Roland Brown and I went over there, and we would insert the 2 of us in this person. Now, I won't need to refer to ourselves. Was Mary Voorhees. When we were there, a man on the train came up and said, you don't know me, Mr. This is Mr. Voorhees. And he said, yes. 20 years ago, 40 years ago, I was in your Bible class, and you changed my life. Some of that muscle got in there. Why? You come to these camps. We don't make you suffer till you turn to God. George Hales and Genevieve Parker and Dalton Miller, we insert a little of some of their experience in there, and in each one of those oysters, there was 2 pearls. And when we left the factory, as we went out the door, head man standing there behind the desk said, come here. He said, open this pearl. I opened it. He said, now take out these 2 pearls. He said, those are for you. Same with Marcia. And then this owner of the pearl farm, he gave us a little book, and each of them 2 or 3 pearls in that. I don't know how rich he did make it, but my goodness. I found it was possible to make saints by mass production, by bringing the Camps Farthest Out, having folks that have spiritual muscle in them, insert this into their souls, and we'll just turn them out. But let me tell you, that doesn't do it only. You've got to get in a prayer group, about 12 of you, and hang and go on to a church or something. You'll see a raft. The raft is a church, a little prayer group. About every 3 months, you should go to some little retreat or other and get the barnacles taken off. Once a year, come to the Camp Farthest Out, and in about 3 years, you'll be a saint. You know what? Why, it's the most perfect pattern I've ever seen. And Edison tried to invent the thing, but this great pearl merchant, the pearl above price, found the secret, and it works. Well, for years we found this working at the Camp Farthest Out. I often, when George isn't around, I refer to him as an example. I often like to refer to the Starr Daily. And I'll refer to him right now. One day he was in a house with all his tools around him, working in front of a safe, dead of night, getting ready to rob that safe. He heard a footstep on the stair, and he turned his flashlight on, and he saw a priest coming down the stairs. He took his gun, and he said, "You take another step at your peril." And the priest said, "I mean you no harm," and came on. Starr had never been able, I've never met a man who couldn't be good in control in the dead of night with a flashlight and a gun. He'd never killed a man, but he could control him without any shooting. He said, "You take another step, and I'll shoot the daylight through you. I mean you no harm," and he came and turned on the light. He sat down in his chair. He said, "What do you want?" "I want your money." "I'll get you the money. I know the combination. It'll save you the time and the work, and it'll save my safe. But before I give you the money, I want to ask what you plan to do with it." "I'll drink it up. What I don't drink up, I'll eat up." "Let me tell you what I was planning to do with it. There's a little lame boy up there, Allie, that doesn't have any crutches. I want to see that he gets some crutches. There's a little old lady that doesn't have food enough. I want to see that she gets a pint of milk every day." He opened the safe, gave him the money, and he told him other things he was going to do, and he said, "You must be hungry, brother. Come out here." And he opened his ice chest and put food on the table, and Starr sat down and ate leisurely. He knew he was safe. He knew the eyes of love of that man was not going to betray him. When he rose and went to the door, the priest said, "You forgot something, brother." "What?" "Why, you left the money here on the table that I just gave you." "If I took that money, I couldn't digest his food." Why, today, Starr Daily has saved more souls than that priest has done. But he planted something. You see what I mean? All the Starr Daily said, all his 25 years in the underworld, 14 years in penitentiaries and chain gangs, he said, "I've never seen a thoroughly conditioned criminal changed by technology or psychology or anything but the saving power of Jesus Christ." You can use punishment. You can try to create pearls by all kinds of things, inserting this thing and that evil thing, and occasionally you'll get a pearl. Most of the cases they go to the devil instead when they beat them down by all these unfortunate things. But you put a living, authentic spiritual experience of someone into a person in need, and you begin to see something begin to happen. Now, I'm not just joking. As I said, I think that St. Peter up there will get red in the face, and all angels will blake when he hears I'm going around the country saying you can turn out saints by mass production. Why, it's like the Ford plant, turning them out in the line. But the way to do it is to get folks at the training camp, get the right leaders, see that the council rings have nothing but harmony and trust in God, and begin a lot of organizers. Now we can do something with this. A great minister who's a great organizer and has no real this thing in him, said, "What's going to happen to you, Glenn Clark, as your work when you die?" I said, "It'll go on." "No, it won't. It'll die with you." I said, "No, I'm not like Stanley Jones. When he died, his 5 ashrams, they couldn't live without Stanley Jones. He has to be there one. Why, the best camps are the ones where I don't go. And now that you've got a son-in-law, I understand. You ought to hire somebody to look after the editing and have to raise $5,000 that him be foot-free to be your trained to be your successor." I said, "No, we can run these things." He said, "Now, I'll fly to New York and meet with any of your rich friends, and I think I can make, in 2 years, I could raise $1 million to underwrite you." Well, he's had so many strings, organization, this and that. I'll tell you, folks, this thing has got to just talk to God. And I do know this. It's his job now. They elected the Koinonia Foundation runs Koinonia, but they're now calling themselves the Mission Farthest Out. Frank Laubach is going to retire from presidency. All his other work, but they're going to keep him as the emeritus or something. And they elected me president, and I was willing to accept it. I was willing to accept it. They do it on these lines. Just as Merrill Bodie stopped all that mess up there, what he said, we can stop all these robberies. I think I can do it. If you let it do it my way. Don't let the police come in on it. Don't let any organizers come in on it. Don't somebody grab it and put a lot of letterheads in it, glamorize it. we're just going to pray with me. I'd like to have you just vision every day. Daydream, if you want to, of seeing $300,000 from flowing in. I don't know how it is more than 100,000, but I might as well make it that way. Just vision it. And don't reach down your pocket and hand me a penny, a dollar, or anything, unless the Lord should absolutely make you do something. But I don't really. I want your prayers. If you know, if I get the prayers of these Camps Farthest Out this summer, why, we're going to find even the oil wells will commence to lean toward us. We just can't stop a movement like this. Why, all I want to do is now, and I want your prayer also, to find just the right persons to go around the world. Now, we have a number of folks who can teach rhythm wonderfully well. Marcia Brown won't want to go every year, all the time, and somebody could teach art. Somebody could do both of them. Marge Lawrence could, and do the singing. We'd have been helped if we had somebody to sing. I think Marge Lawrence, and maybe you'll know some people. They'll be trained here. And we want to have some leaders, but presently this is what's going to happen. If we had this 300,000, I'd just answer Roland Brown right away. Tell those 2 ministers to come over here. We'll furnish the $1,000. We know they can be taken care of, and we'll get them, that way they can go to 3 or 4 camps. It won't cost them anything, so they'll go in his car. And when they go back, we'll only need to send one person. Roland Brown alone could go to England, and pair with one of them. And another year, they'd have their own leadership. That's what we're going to do. We're going to wean them, these nations, one by one. Well, folks, I don't have my notes here, and I don't know what I've forgotten. But I know the Lord had to do the talking. Well, folks, I feel like saying hallelujah. And tonight, after George's talk, maybe he'll tell us how he turned from a poor old oyster into a pearl. Because he really is got something now. He's been not, but it isn't him, you know. It's something that came in from Jesus. But at any rate, then we'll go out, right out here, and we're going to have a broadcast. It'll just take about 15 minutes. Don't invite your friends to see us broadcast a speech. We're just going to form a circle and let God's love come down, and we're going to send that love out over the world. We're doing that in all the camps. And over the power of those concentric circles, uniting all over the world, we're commencing to feel it already. I just feel the footsteps of these of the leaders we want, and I feel the doors opening, and with all this prayer behind me, when I stand before those senators next year, I want to tell you, it won't be Glenn Clark talking, and I wouldn't be surprised if he'll create about 3 or 4 pearls, 3 or 4 saints, absolutely rare, turned loose in the Senate. There's such contagion, they'll just spread it all over that Senate, and I know I'm going to be talking to the president. I just want you to see me putting some pearls in his mouth, too, right under his tongue. But you know, right in his heart, right in his soul. The other thing is all there. And we're going to ask, I'm not going to ask the president, I'll just explain it for that 300,000. That's what I had in mind when I wrote that book. I'm going to ask the higher authority. If I wanted to get the president to give me an army of 300,000, my first step would be to get some folks who had influence with him to write him, see him. And but I'm going to ask the ruler of the universe, and I'm getting some folks who have some influence with the ruler of the universe to ask to give me that 300,000. And all you folks trained in prayer, most of you here have an awful lot of influence with the ruler of the universe. So I'm going to ask you just to talk to the ruler of the universe to give me an army of 300,000, trained players, just the right teams to send around the world, and just the right money to give all these scholarships and bring in these ministers. I want to say, when the ministers on fire, they are the really lineal descendants of the disciples. And I'm here, all the leaders here, that is, the 3 speaking leaders, well, put in this soft talker, 4 of us, all of us laymen. There isn't a single minister that's giving you messages here, excepting we bring in Brother Holmes, that give you a little advice at times. But the point I'm getting at is, we're asking you to pray that we can get the money to bring in all the ministers of America that want to come in without, and all those who can't afford it to come in. And when they get on fire, you've got the world saved. The future of this nation lies more in the churches than it does in Congress. Let us bow our head in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to just be a channel for your purpose. And when we stood in that inner corridor of the great pyramid, up there at the king's chamber, at the very top of it, where the prophecy is that now, in 1953, that's come to its end, through the symbolical or prophetic symbol that the time for wars have ended. We would ask you, Father, to make that come to pass and use us as instruments in any way you wish to bring that prophecy into fulfillment. And so we give this dream, this pattern. We feel that it was dreamed in heaven first. We feel that a good many people it's caught the imagination of thousands of people, but Jesus, we are sure that it's caught your imagination before it caught any of ours, and we're merely reflecting what you have given to us. And so thank you. We're going to be your partners in any way you want to use us. In Jesus' name, amen.